It's the 5th week of work by the team on renovating the roof, and after getting the first new layers in above the new beams, now it's time to work on the cornice, creating a totally new one on this section and doing some repair work on the one at the back, both of which will require some careful and skilled work by the 2 lead masons and a fair amount of support from the other members of the team. But before getting started with that work, we needed to move around a fair amount of scaffolding. And thankfully, the weather on the first day wasn't going to cause any problems with this work. And it was a beautiful sunny morning when I opened up and headed upstairs to check the work area. Which, once again, was much more untidy than I had remembered it being, but it had at least stayed dry over the weekend. And when the team got on site, they headed straight upstairs and took down the indoor scaffolding so that they could use it on the side of the house where they would need to work on the outside wall edges. And with the scaffolding coming down, I had more space for other tidying up. First, removing the last rubble left from the wall we started taking down last week. And then moving on to tidying the floor of the extension area. While the team started putting up the scaffolding at the side of the house, I started work on setting up a new camera experiment before the mid-morning break. Apologies if you've been looking for and cannot see the last 4 videos, but I've temporarily taken them offline in order to make some checks, and I'm hoping to get them available again very soon. And you'll also notice that this week, in order to avoid having to make similar checks, I won't be filming certain aspects of the work. Anyway, for now, it's back to the setup of my new experiment. With the experiment set up, I got ready to return to another task that I had started last week, chipping off more of the cement render on the corner of the house. This time taking more material out of the joints between the stones and bricks, and then working my way up the wall, which pretty much took up the rest of my day. And I finished about the same time that the team had finished getting all their scaffolding up. The second day was another bright and sunny morning, and after opening up, I got the team to make some adjustments to a couple of the props upstairs. and then to replace one of the brick boards that had got cracked at some stage. And the team then moved outside to start work on the walls at the front, where they were going to need to rebuild the tops of the walls on which they would be putting the new cornice. First of all, removing any poorer quality or looser material so that they could create a smoother and stronger series of stones at the top. And while they worked outside, I returned to more tidying up inside. First, removing the door from the wall that we had started removing last week. And then I was joined by Rex, who was kindly back for the morning, and he got to work on removing the remnants of that wall. I then looked at removing these other doors, but it will require a bit more work to take out a lot of the old rusted screws and hinges, so that's for another day. Meanwhile, the team now needed both mortar and materials for their work, and they were setting up things at the back of the house to be able to lift them up more easily, as well as taking down some of the leftover materials from last week. And they also now needed me to extend the water supply to this area. I was then back tidying up indoors. Rex was finishing his wall work, and the team were now measuring the height at the ends of the front wall to confirm the levels and angles for the top of the wall. The architect and Technico were back on site to check on things. And because the team now needed stones for the wall rebuilding, I reorganized the rock piles to make it easier to find and select stones of different shapes and sizes. And having finished their wall work for the day, the team did some tidying up and securing of their two separate workspaces. And when they had left, I checked on their work for the day and the progress they had made at rebuilding with stones the top of the front wall, including above the opening to the right. The next day, we were all back on site early, and the team got back to work on the front wall. I headed into the salon to tidy up some of the rubble in the corner that had come down from where we were removing the wall above. and then I checked if any of the stones could be used in the wall. Before heading upstairs to check on the team's progress and to see how they were using both the reorganised stones and the old flat roof tiles they had stacked up earlier for using in the cornice now. I then stayed up there to clear just about the last section of old plaster on any of the walls, in an area that I hadn't been confident to work in until the new beams and ring beam were in place, but which I wanted to check the quality of the underlying stones and brick arches. After finishing my initial clearing of the arches, I then had to head off site for a few hours. And upon my return, just after the team had left, I checked on progress for the day. The tops of the side walls of the extension had now been rebuilt with stones. And the first layer of tiles for the new cornice had now been put in, including around the curved corner of the wall. And there was also a lot more materials on the roof that had been delivered while I was out. The fog on the next morning made everything a lot darker to start with, but thankfully it gradually cleared, and the team were able to crack on with their work, a lot of which would involve them reusing the flat tiles from the old roof layers, most of which they were now needing to lift up from below. And while they carried on with their cornice work, I started my search for stones for using on the salon wall. In the section where a number of us had chipped away exposed bedrock in recent weeks, and where I was planning on trying out some stone wall work of my own. Thankfully, with the assistance of Photo for mortar making and moving. After a reasonable start, my progress was slowed by some interruptions, some poorly chosen stones, and the need to take down and redo a couple of sections. And then after a late lunch, I had a few other things I had to do before returning to the wall. Well, I think it's fair to say it's not looking any prettier after my lunch break, so I think I need to look at it again tomorrow. For the last hour on site, I searched for some bigger and better smooth face stones, and then checked how they might fit in together on the wall. And then, with the team also finishing for the day, I was able to check on their progress, which had been much faster than mine and with a much higher level of skill and quality. With both the side walls of the extension now having a tile top, the front wall section now having a second layer of tiles on top of which the gutter will go, and the next section of wall having been rebuilt as well. The last day of the week was similar to the day before, with mist in the air, the team getting set up at the workspace at the back, and me returning to work on the salon wall. First laying out the stones I thought I could use, then cleaning out and redoing one part I wasn't happy with. And for most of the day, that is what I continued working on. While the team continued their work outside, progressing along the walls towards the back of the house and starting repair work on part of the old brick cornice at the back. Before finishing for the day with a final tidy up for the week. And that is the end of work for this week, where thankfully the rain has mostly stayed away, although it does seem to be making an appearance now. And the week started with work up there, where the team were taking out the scaffolding to be able to put it back up outside so that they could start work on the cornices, especially on the front of the house. And in the days that followed, they've been working with great skill at repairing the tops and edges of the walls, and then placing the tiles that have come from the old roof layer along the edge to create a new cornice on the front. And then they've been working their way around the wall to where they've got to this point today. And here is a closer look of the result of that work. First of all, looking at the old cornice with two of the top layers and the old gutter now removed, and some initial repairs on a couple of cracks. Then at the next section of wall with the top rebuilt and with some old render removed from below. And then the walls either side of the next corner now having their new tile layers on top. And because that work has involved moving hundreds of stones and tiles and carefully by hand getting them in exactly the right position and at the right angle, the progress this week hasn't appeared to have been as fast as previous weeks, but they've done a great job at getting to where they are now. And I'm hoping that next week they will finish that off pretty quickly, and then they'll be able to get back to getting on top of the roof and putting the next layers on top. So please do tune in next week to see how we get on.